thrilling videos. It's great to be back, and so quickly with another video camera review. So today we're going to be having a quick look at the Panasonic RX14. Funnily enough, I actually got this video camera yesterday, today being 29th October 2022. I found this little gem yesterday on the 28th, and I found it as I kind of walked out of the local gym that I frequent. I was kind of walking past a thrift store or a charity shop, whatever you want to call it, and I kind of saw this sat on a little bench outside, or table if you will. So I kind of peeked in the bag and could see it was a video camera. I was like, oh. So I kind of thought, do I need it? Do I need to, review another one? I was just like, of course you do. So I picked up the camera, walked into the to the charity shop, and I held the bag up and said, how much for this? How much for this? Ooh. Just had that motorcycle go by. Yeah, I said to the lady, how much for this? And she was on the phone. And I said, how much for this? And she went, £5. It's like, £5? And I said, I'll be back shortly. So that is how I come to get the video camera. So obviously the Panasonic RX14 is a VHS-C camera, and I believe it came out around 1999. I will get onto that shortly. I've got a magazine which is kind of like a reference guide for me. It's like a What Camcorder magazine, and I believe I've kind of dated it to around that time period. But I will talk to you a little bit more about that shortly. So as always, let's have a little close-up look at the camera. I'll also show you the things that I got in the bag, and then I'll show you some footage at the end. So without further ado, let's have a little look at the Panasonic RX14. Okay, so just before we get started, I just want to show you what I got in the bag. So obviously in the black camera bag, I got obviously the camera itself. The battery was attached on the back. I'll just take this off just to show you. So it's a Li-ion or lithium-ion battery pack, and it's a model CGR V610, which seemed to be quite difficult to get. Now I've managed to charge this up with the accessories that I've got in the bag, and so far it's doing well. I was a bit worried that it would have lack of charge, but it's been okay for now, so to set that aside. But we got the charging station, so obviously pop the battery on here, we can charge that up. And what was really useful is I got the DC out cable with it as well. So I got the standard plug to plug the DC outlet in, but I also got, which was really important, the DC out. And what this allows me to do is plug this end into the DC out here, and then plug it in to the outlet right here. And obviously these little attachments are so hard to get. If you haven't got them with the camera, they're so difficult to get hold of. So I was really pleased to get that because it allowed me to test it straight away. So got the battery, got the charger, got the outlet. There was the mains, and something really useful was the instructions, which was great. They were quite bent up. I've kind of flattened them out as best I can. So yeah, that was what I got in the bag, everything you needed to get go. So let's have a little look at the camera. So here you can see the side, or the left hand side of the camera as we look at it, but we're just going to spin it round to have a little look at the front. So I've still got its lens cap on, so I'm going to pop that off. Hello. So the first thing to note about this camera, which I didn't realise, I'll just turn it around and just lower it here, is it is actually a wide lens, which was similar to the last camera that I reviewed. And if you just have a look on the top there, there's all your lens information for any of you enthusiasts out there. So just going to pop that back up onto the table, turn it back around. Obviously on the front here, we have the microphone on the front. Now, one thing to bear in mind is the fact that this is mono recording. So you only get one audio outlet, and you've got no mic input on this camera. So something to consider if you're thinking about getting this camera. Okay, so we're going to move back around to the left hand side of the camera. So on the top here you can see that it says 45, I'll spin the light a little bit, 45 times digital zoom, 22 times optical zoom. Obviously there's the features to switch those on. Now I'm going to do a little part discussing certain areas of this camera at the end of the video, because some of them are just a little bit more laborious and complicated. So on the front here we've got your program AE, which you should be familiar with now. We have your effect, and you've got effect 2. So I'll come back and talk about this section after we've looked at the camera. Here we've got a backlight compensation button, so if you need a little bit of extra light, then you just press that down. Okay, so down here we have a dial and a button, and it's quite self-explanatory. So this allows for manual focus. So you can have the camcorder switched on to automatic focus, but if you want to change it into manual, you can press this down, and then you can use this dial to focus the camera. Here we have a fade button. I think that's quite self-explanatory. This camera has some basic fades that will just allow things to fade in and fade out. Next up again is WB, so that's white balance. So if you want to manually check your white balance, there is the button for you here. Okay, so on the side here, something I've never really seen on a camcorder, if you can see that here, it's got a lock button. Initially I thought there was some kind of movement that you had to make with it, like maybe to click it in place, but that's just encouraging you to press that as you're shutting the mechanism. So for example, if I eject the tape, eject button's this blue button on the top here, so if I just press eject, like so. If you want to shut the camcorder up, it just encourages you to basically press the lock button to ensure that the camera is loaded properly. So that's all it is. I should also say that this does have a little LED readout. So when we turn the camera on, other than the noisiness, if you can see here, just zoom into that, you can see that it has automatic, turn that a little bit, and a battery icon. There will be obviously other things that can appear on here, but for now this is just a demonstration. Okay, so let's turn the camera around, and on the back here there really isn't anything to look at other than the battery on the back here, which is released by this mechanism on the bottom. We're going to leave that on for now. So we have your viewfinder here. It's not a colour viewfinder. I believe that this was a range of camcorders. There was 3 of them: the RX14, which is the one here, the RX24 and the RX64, and I believe the better models had a colour viewfinder, I believe. Now we have to lift the viewfinder up here. It goes all the way up here, and if we have a look here, this is where your audio visual cables are. So you only got obviously a single video and a single audio out, and then right here we've got a DC out as well. I don't actually know how that would be used, if there was an old kind of connector. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but just for clarity. Now this is interesting. You've got the power here, and I couldn't figure this button out. It's so obvious, but I was kind of trying to push it in, but this actually flicks out, so it's quite a different design. If I can show you this, so, and that powers up the camera, and we'll just leave that for a moment. If we power up the camera, we should be able to see the viewfinder, so that's all working lovely. And then as you see on the top of the camera, when it's powered on, we get a little red LED, so you can see here this is coming down the side to show that the camera is operational. And then if we press this, this will show me that it's now in VCR mode. Okay, so as we go around to the right hand side of the camera, absolutely nothing here other than the fact that we've got your telephoto zoom. Nothing spectacular there. And then we come back round to the front of the camera. And I also just wanted to say, I totally forgot because it's not something that I usually talk about, but under here is the white balance sensor as well. And I found that out because I got the manual with the camera, as I told you earlier. So that effectively is the camera. There's nothing else that needs to be shown to you, but I am also just going to have a little section coming up very shortly discussing the buttons here. And as you can see here, if we lift this up, there's additional buttons here. So I'm going to take a picture of the sections, and then I'm going to just have a very brief overview of what the buttons do. Okay, so first the program AE button. It's quite self-explanatory, and when we press that button we're given the option to select any number of the following things: automatic mode, manual mode, sports mode, portrait mode, low light mode, spotlight mode, and surf and snow mode, because you know what, we all need surf and snow mode. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so now we're going to briefly look at the digital effects 1 and 2. So if we press Effect 1, we get the option to turn on digital zoom mode. We can select mosaic mode, and we can also select stretch mode. Alternatively, if we hit Effect 2, we get the choice of negative or positive mode, solarization mode, sepia mode, black and white mode, and then a number of different digital fade modes. So let's have a look at Effect button 1. So when I press it the first time, that's digital zoom. You're not going to see anything in that regard, but that means that it's on. The next one is mosaic. You can see there, so you can cover up anybody that you think is suspicious. And then stretch. I've never understood stretch. I've always found it a little bit dull. So press it again, and now we return back to the beginning. So now we're going to go over to Effect 2. So firstly, Effect 2 press is negative. We press it again, and we have solarization mode. Press it for a third time, we have sepia. Press it for a fourth time, we have black and white. Now the subsequent 3 presses are the digital fades, so I'm going to talk to you about those now. The way that you use them is you have to select which one that you want first, so let's say digital 1, and then on the side of the camera, which I showed you earlier, is the fade button. And you have to hold that button down in order for the fade to happen, and then release it for it to reverse that. So I'm just going to show you this now. Let's go for digital fade 1, and now I'm going to hold down the fade button now. And as you will see, there we go. And I want to release it. And there we go. So hold down to start, release for it to basically end. Digital Effect 2. Now we're going to press the fade button. And finally, Effect 3 or Fade 3. Hold that fade button down. Nice. Now I feel like a professional. Okay, so finally, just having a look at the top part of the camera with the various different buttons. So if we start at the top, we have the tracking button. Now, the 2 buttons on the top are used to either improve the tracking on the cassette if you're running into problems when viewing it back, but they also double up as the date and time buttons, so it enables you to kind of strafe between the settings as you are trying to set up the correct date and time for the camcorder. Okay, so working our way down with this, looking at the memory and reset buttons now, and effectively if you press the memory button a number of times whilst you're using the camcorder, it displays kind of like different things on the screen, so things like elapsed time, how much time's remaining on the cassette, things like that. And if you want to reset that, so say for example the counter's giving you a readout that you no longer want, you can just hit that reset button and go back to 0 on the counter. Okay, so now looking at the play, the pause and the stop button, they all double up and have dual functions. So obviously play, pause and stop mean just that when you're watching a cassette. But if you're in the camera mode and we press the play button, you can see that takes you to the menu. And then whilst we're in the menu button, we can select our item and then we can set it with those buttons. So they're just dual purpose buttons, quite straightforward. And then working our way down, we have the search buttons. So as you can see here, we can rewind and we can fast forward our video at any stage. So now onto date/title and color. So if we press date and title and we use those menu buttons, the play, the pause and stop button, it will enable us to navigate menus so we can set the desired date and whatever our desired title is. And actually, just looking in the instruction booklet, the actual date for the title is my birthday when I was 18. So that's quite interesting. And the colour button is just, you can simply have a choice of what colour you would like the title to be. And you can have white, yellow, magenta, red, cyan, green, blue, black and white. It's quite a lot of choice actually. So almost there now. So now we're on the store off and on, and they're all to do with the D superimpose, which stands for digital superimpose. So once you've created the types of titles that you want, you can store them on the camera, or in the camera I suppose you could say, and then you can toggle them off and on as and when you want them. And then lastly, The button on the bottom is to select whether or not you want the camera to be in camera mode or VCR mode, and that is very self-explanatory. And then right at the bottom there we have the little blue button. Pull that across and you'll eject the cassette. So I hope that's useful. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I was struggling to try and find out exactly when the Panasonic RX14 launched into market. And I had a look on Wikipedia, and the earliest that they went back to was 2002. And I was thinking to myself, wow, like, you know, it's not that old a camera, like surely there should be something around for it. So suddenly I remembered that I had a reference magazine which I picked up from a charity shop quite a long time ago, and you can see that here. It's called What Camcorder. And obviously for nerds like me, this is really, really useful, especially when you're trying to date something. But you've got to hope that you've got a magazine that's in and around the right time frame. So anyway, I opened up the magazine and went to the back, because there's like a reference section of kind of cameras. And I didn't find the camera that I'm reviewing, but I did find this. And if we read through this together, it kind of gives us an idea of when the Panasonic RX14 launched into market. Now, as you can see, this is a review for the Panasonic MV RZ1 VZ1. And as you see at the bottom, it says this was tested in May 2000/April 2000. So a little bit unsure as to when they tested the camera. But if we just read this, the VHS-C format continues to offer competitive prices and appeal to first-time buyers. Panasonic's 2 units from its 2000 lineup, the RZ1 and the VZ1, are replacements for last year's RX14, RX24 and RX64. So it's likely that the RX14 came out in 1999, but it's a little bit difficult to say for certain. So I'm saying it's maybe between 1998 and 1999 because of when new products are launched into market. But if anybody out there does know different, please let me know. Okay, so that was a little bit more of a longer overview than I anticipated, but there you go. You know, you've got it there if you need it. Okay, so let's now have a look at some video which I shot today, and see what this video camera is still capable of. So let's have a look at that now.
Soundstripe. Soundstripe. Soundstripe.
So there you have it. What are my thoughts about using the Panasonic RX14? Well, generally I've had a really good experience. I've really enjoyed shooting with the camera. It's quite a nice slim design in comparison to some other Panasonic VHS-C camcorders. It's really responsive. All the buttons work, which is really nice. Yeah, I can't really fault the camera really. I suppose the only problem I've encountered is when I'm playing back any kind of video that I've shot in preparation for making this video and playing back some of the content I went out and shot this afternoon. There were periods where the picture started jumping up and down. So originally I thought it was a tracking problem, but actually it's not. When the picture is working as should be and I start pressing the tracking button, it actually does its job. And it kind of makes the picture gradually worse, and I kind of bring it back. So there's possibly two reasons why that picture's jumping around. Number one, it doesn't like it when you, say, re-record a number of times over imagery already recorded, or it could just be maybe when you press record, there could be a slight electrical impulse in the camera, and it kind of makes it shake. Because what I did notice is when I left the camera running, it wouldn't necessarily happen. So that's really been the only fault or problem that I've found. And what would be interesting is if I can get one of those VHS-C cassettes where you take the camera, when you take the cassette out of the camera and place the small cassette into a larger cassette and play it in the VCR, that may also show me that the actual camera is recording fine, but it just could be a dirty head issue within the camera. So yeah, that's really my only bugbear really. So yeah. Let me know what you think, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. See you later.